Good afternoon, everybody. We're glad to have you here today, and welcome to the first in a series of NASEO led calls on energy efficiency revolving loan funds, sharing success, and telling the story of impact. We're really glad to have you here today, and we're excited for the conversations to follow. Just a little bit always about NASEO. Again, we're the only national nonprofit association for the governor-designated energy officials from each of the 56 states and territories. We serve as a resource for the state energy offices. We involve them in topical committees, regional dialogues, and other events that also help facilitate peer learning, best practice sharing, and consensus building. And where applicable, we do advance the interest of the energy offices before Congress and the administration. And we also do run a number of programs in buildings, electricity, financing, affordability, innovation, solar, and so forth. If there's something going on at the state energy level, we will certainly be participating in it and hopefully be able to help you out on it. Before we get started here, just a couple of housekeeping remarks. Again, this is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar, so please be sure to mute yourself when not speaking. Please use the raise hand button to ask to speak or add questions to the chat box for our speakers, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. And then, of course, slides and recording for this call will be posted to NASEO's website. So a couple quick opening remarks here. We're really glad to have you here today. Obviously, a lot of you have been working on your energy efficiency revolving loan funds under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for the past couple of years. And now we're starting to get to the point where we're actually seeing these funds being deployed and these revolving loan funds made ready for use and to start seeing, grants and loans being made out of these as well. So what we're here to do is to both hear from other states that are ready to go and or have started making loans already from the revolving loan funds, and talk about how those revolving loan funds are contributing to the success of their state. And then also provide some time at the end of the session, once our speakers are done, to ask a few questions of yourself in terms of what technical assistance your states may still need as you work to finish up developing and getting those revolving loan funds ready to go. So we have three speakers here today that are going to talk to us about their revolving loan funds and how they've structured them. Our first speaker will be Leah Wilkes. She is the Financial Programs Project Manager, and she is with Minnesota. And then we'll have Elena Schmieder, who is an energy program specialist, and she is with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And then finally, we'll have Abigail Emery, who is with Kansas Corporation Commission, and they will talk about Kansas's revolving loan program. We got three good presentations today and a nice conversation afterwards, so we hope you stick around. With that, let's get started. I would like to turn things over to Leah to get us going with the Minnesota Revolving Loan Fund. Leah, please feel free to take it from here.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Leah Wilkes. I am the Financial Programs Project Planner for the Energy Market Transformation Team in the State Energy Office of Minnesota. So I do loan and grant programs using federal funding dollars. So one of them is the RLF. In addition, I have a program for a program for the EECBG, and then I'm also working on some financial programs for Solar for All. Okay, so next slide, please. So we have opted to take the energy, the EERLF and funding and add to a model that has proven to be successful. We have two commercial property assessed clean energy programs that were both funded using ARA funding. The first one is the St. Paul Port Authority Trillion BTU, which is a statewide program. And then we also have a smaller regional one with one of our regional development commissions down in the Southwest area. The St. Paul Port Authority started with $5 million for XL territory and then another $10 million outside of XL. XL territory covers our metro area around Minneapolis, St. Paul, and pretty much about eight or nine surrounding counties around the metro area. Of that 15 million, that has now been revolved 4 times. They're on their fifth go around now. So they have lent roughly 65 million from that original 15 million. That program, their basement is 25,000 and it goes up to $1 million in the TBTU funds. But if they do have a lending partner or participation lender partner, they will do loans over $1 million. They partner with local banks for participation lending and the purchasing of loans. We have a bank here, Sunrise Banks, that has been partnering with them, and it aligns with that bank's net zero program. So they seem to net zero lending program. So they really seem to complement each other. So finding local lending institutions has been crucial for the St. Paul Port Authority's success. The other one is the Southwest Regional Development Commission. That was $650,000 from ARA funding, and they did find some additional. We provided them some additional funding several years later, and they've lent out about 1.2 million. Their ranges are between 5,000 and 100,000, but and I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat here for a website that will let's see, let me pull that up if I can get it up. I can put that in just a moment. But the majority of their loans are less than 20,000, which shows that there is an appetite for these kinds of lending products for small businesses. The two of these programs have a reciprocal referral. They refer to each other. So if St. Paul Port Authority gets a smaller program inquiry or smaller project inquiry from that Southwest region, they will refer them back down to Southwest, and vice versa. If there's a large, say, solar array for over $100,000, the Southwest Regional RDC will go ahead and refer that back up to the St. Paul Port Authority. One of the things I want to highlight here is that in the life of that St. Paul Port Authority program, there have only been 5 defaults in the lifetime of the program for a total of $141,000 out of $64 million. So, and those write-offs, if noted, 5 defaults for 141 were relatively small defaults. They weren't in the millions. And the Southwest RDC has had no defaults. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we really emphasize here in Minnesota is working as much as possible with regional partners. We really lean into the partners that understand the needs and the challenges of the regions that they serve. If we were trying to reach out directly to small businesses, it would be a really heavy lift, and we would miss a lot of people. The regional development commissions know their counties. They know the county commissioners, who oftentimes are business people themselves. We have found them to be really critical partners in many of our programs, including our state competitiveness fund, local capacity grants, EECBG. They are really great partners, and we really kind of look for those kind of local partners that know who's who and what's what and what the needs are of their particular area. One of the things that we are exploring is an expansion similar to the Southwest RDC to other regional development organizations. So we have been talking to them, and we have 3 of the RDOs have expressed interest in starting programs that are similar to the Southwest RDC, which is really great news, because now we're covering more than, as far as those smaller loans, more than just that Southwest corner. But that still doesn't address the other areas that will not have a smaller regional program. So we're also looking at the potential for a CDFI partner to be a central administrator for smaller loans. We understand the St. Paul Port Authority. They don't have a huge staff. They don't have the administrative capacity to do $10,000 or $7,000 loans. So trying to find a partner that would be able to help do that is something that we're going to continue to do, either using, looking at other federal monies that might be defederalized in the future, or other funding sources that could come from the state. One of our other critical partners is the clean energy resource teams. Um, they are funded by the University of Minnesota and by the Minnesota Commerce Department, and they are exactly what they sound like. They are a tool for outreach and education here in the state of Minnesota. They have regional representatives, and then they've also just started building a statewide ambassador program where they are trying to recruit at least one person from every single county in Minnesota who can talk about clean energy programs that are available for residents, for businesses, for school districts, for local units of government. It's trying to create a web of outreach and education statewide. CERTS has proven to be a critical partner in the building of the commercial PACE programs. When the St. Paul Port Authority was first building their program for commercial property assessed clean energy, you need to have joint powers agreements. What the Port Authority discovered is if you go to a county, especially from an organization that is based in the metro area, you go to a county in rural Minnesota and say, hey, we have this program for tax assessments for small business owners or large business owners. You should do a joint powers agreement with us. They didn't find a lot of traction there. But if the clean energy resource teams heard of a business owner that was interested in this program, they could work with that business owner and go to a council meeting or approach a county commissioner and say, we have a business in your county that is interested in this program. Would you be willing to do a joint powers agreement? It was really a good model. And the Port Authority has acknowledged that a lot of that success is based on the partnership with the clean energy resource teams. So if you have statewide partners like that that could potentially work with someone who's interested in being the administrator for this, that's really kind of crucial for this. Next slide, please. So we fulfilled the 180-day deadline on our EERLF by providing additional funding to that Southwest program. And now we are in the negotiations and kind of preliminary contracting for those other regional programs. And so we are trying to figure out what works with SRDC and how they can share those best practices and then ways that we can make that money go further in finding other lending partners. Again, we're also looking for that central administrator to help with those smaller statewide loans in those regions that wouldn't have their own regional program. And then in addition to that, we are also supporting all of these programs, including the St. Paul Port Authority, with our Energy Information Center, which we have a lot of really great tools that can be used with that effort. We have basically kind of movable displays that could be taken to communities, fairs, that type of thing. We have a large display at the Minnesota State Fair, which if anyone's ever been here is a big, huge event here. And then we also look for other opportunities to just show up and talk about some of these programs. So I'll kind of stop there, and then I'm open to answer questions later or during the discussion period.
All right. Thanks so much, Leah. That was a really great presentation to kick us off, and congrats on making your first couple loans with the ERLF. I know it's a big step. All right, we're gonna move things. We're gonna go east a little bit, and we're gonna swing things over to Pennsylvania, where Elena Schmieder is going to be talking to us about the MORE program. Elena, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Thank you. So I'm Elena Schmieder, and I've worked, as they said before, as an energy programs specialist in the Department of Environmental Protection. I work primarily with the Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority, which just last year opened their Green Bank, which is called the Energy Accelerator Program, or EAP. And we currently have two programs that are administered under the EAP, one of them being this program that I'm going to talk about today, and then a separate one. Both are administered by the National Energy Improvement Fund. And this was, I believe, the second product that we came out with. So It is called the Municipal Opportunities for Retrofits and Energy Efficiency Program, which is quite a mouthful, so I'm just going to refer to it as the MORE program. Next slide, please. So the MORE program is a two-part energy efficiency funding program for municipalities in Pennsylvania. It consists of a MORE grant and a MORE loan. So the way that we went about putting this together is that we actually blended our energy efficiency and conservation block grant, or EECBG, with the RLF funds. So when we're talking about the MORE grant, that is primarily coming from the EECBG funds. We also have a separate fund that we're using EECBG for as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then the MORE loan is basically the EERLF funds. We were able to just invest as much as possible into that revolving loan fund. And I'll give a bit more details about that later as well. But putting these two programs together, we just thought that it would accomplish larger, more effective energy efficiency projects. So as you can see from our primary goal down there, that really was the scenario. We could have administered some EECBG grants and gone so far, but we really wanted to maximize the potential of both of these programs, which is why we chose to combine them. So one sort of sets up the other, and let's go to the next slide. So first, talking about eligibility, we put this together for Pennsylvania municipal governments. We compared who would be eligible for EECBG versus EERLF, and we saw that the best opportunity would be for Pennsylvania local governments who did not receive an EECBG grant. So as we go through this, we're looking at basically any local government, county, city, borough, town, townships, municipal authorities, which meets the definition here in Pennsylvania of a unit of local government that didn't receive an EECBG grant. And then from this list, we also created a priority recipient list. So about 102 communities across Pennsylvania were both environmental justice communities, as well as communities who were experiencing severe financial difficulty. So we wanted to prioritize those potential recipients as much as possible in order to be able to utilize these funds. Next slide, please. So the first part is the MORE grant. As I said before, this was funded by EECBG. We had first budgeted approximately $1.8 million to award, but we actually ended up increasing it to 1.9 plus in this award because of how much interest we started to receive toward the end of the application window. We did open the grant on June 3rd, which was as soon as we got the funds, and it stayed open, and we were even granted an extension on committing those funds, so we were able to keep it open until December 6th. And keeping that open as long as possible was really in the best interest of the program to garner more applications, just because when you're working with local governments, it can be really difficult for them to get stuff done in a short period of time. So the program was first come, first served with reserved funds for priority applicants. So for the first 3 months, we set aside 1 million of the 1.8 million for just the priority applicants. And once August 30th had passed, anything that wasn't applied for, we opened up to everybody else. Fortunately, we didn't have to go the route where we had to build a wait list or anything like that, but it did help some of those priority applicants get their awards early. We also have these awards are up to $50,000, and they can be for 3 eligible uses. So for the level 2 commercial energy audits, energy conservation measure project design, and MORE loan application development, and then interest rate buy down. So those first 2 items, the audit and the project design, are actually prerequisites to apply for the loan. They have to have a project design, scope of work, and a level 2 energy audit in order to apply for the MORE loan. So by offering these funds, we were kind of setting them up for the best possible scenario of maximizing their energy efficiency. And then, of course, the interest rate buy down to make this a usable program for local governments. Paying interest rates on large loans is simply not something that they commonly do, especially for like in these types of programs. So yeah, we decided to add that as like the third option here. And while this grant was open, we did receive 42 local governments who submitted applications who were eligible. And this far exceeded our 36, I guess, of what we thought we would be awarding. And that's why we actually had to increase the budget, which DOE was kind enough to help us out with getting accomplished in a rather short period of time. Next slide, please. So with the MORE loan, this is 100% funded by RLF funds, as well as some private capital. We leveraged our RLF award to create a $9 million revolving loan fund. These loans can be used for retrofits, energy efficiency upgrades, and renewable energy generation, as long as it's also paired with energy efficiency measures. The interest rate can be bought down, as I said before. This is actually pretty key for local governments. And while more grant recipients do have a budget to buy down the interest rate on a MORE loan, we also set aside part of our EECBG funding as sort of like a discretionary fund, which allows us to fill in some gaps. So if we have maybe grant recipients who can't quite buy their interest rate down to 0%, we can help them out from this discretionary fund. Or if they simply just miss the window to apply for the MORE grant, we can use this discretionary fund to help them out in that way as well. We also allow up to 15-year repayment periods, or like the end of the project's useful life for this MORE loan. And it opened on December 27th. So meeting the 180-day deadline was basically us just being able to open this program, though this was about the time that people were starting to use their MORE grant awards. So we were not anticipating any loans right off the bat. We currently do not have any fully executed loans, but we do have 3 that are currently working on applications who are just finishing up some of the final touches of project design before we can follow through with approving those. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some challenges. Because we blended the EERLF and EECBG grant together, timing of the application submissions and approvals was paramount. So this became worrisome when we had to resubmit both applications, but do so in a time frame that also allowed us to build the grant program on the back end. So we had to have a program ready to launch when the EECBG funds were awarded to allow potential applicants the most time possible to complete the application. And because we only had 180 days to commit those funds, many of the local governments we wanted to reach were not going to be able to complete an application quickly due to numerous reasons, like you would typically encounter with local governments, such as time, resources, approvals, etc. So we needed the most time possible for applications to be submitted, but not overcommit our budget. We did receive an extension, as I said before, for committing the EECBG funds, which was helpful, but it also, in a way, pushed back the time frame in which we could also open the RLF loan. We really wanted to make sure that we had that done about the time that the grant application was ending, and getting that extension kind of extended the time that we were also able to offer that. But in the end, we actually ended up with a seemingly perfect timeline. So then we get into the next challenge here, which admittedly, I had my doubts early on about local governments using a loan for energy efficiency upgrades. During the design phase of this program, I had calls with local government associations and other stakeholders, and we gathered as much useful information as we could about what would allow local governments to use a loan for energy efficiency and how to best meet their financial and energy efficiency needs. So the answer was pretty clear. It had to be cheap. Overall, the EECBG grants alone would not have as big an impact on improving energy efficiency if we just offered the program as a standalone grant. So we opted to use those funds to reduce the barriers to affordable financing. The MORE grant pays for the loan prerequisites and provides a means to buy down the interest rate, which creates the ideal scenario if you choose to go that route. And we're hoping that people kind of use it in that way. So the ideal scenario would essentially be that local governments would have an audit with the projected energy savings that would allow them to design a project that reallocates the money they save from energy efficiency measures to pay toward a 0% interest loan. And we're hoping that that has little to no impact on their budget so that this just is enticing to them. And then we do have the last challenge that I listed here, which is outreach and communication. This was a pretty major hurdle. This is kind of a complicated program, so messaging about the program had to be very clear, but also happen very fast. So I enlisted the assistance of others in my office, as well as some local government associations, the Department of Community and Economic Development, other DEP offices, and state personnel who just have direct contact with local governments. And it wasn't about reaching out to local governments with a flyer or mass email. It was about having direct conversations with the right person in that government who could speak to the energy efficiency needs of government-owned buildings and facilities. So we needed interest from officials who could influence decision-making or that had decision-making power. So we had targeted call campaigns and information webinars and assistance from outside organizations who saw the value in the program that we provided. And we did the best that we could, but honestly, I still have some governments that are calling and asking if there's going to be a second round of grant awards, mostly because they just only found out about the program, which is a little heartbreaking to say the least, but I am keeping a list of them should we be able to offer something similar again in the future so that I can do that direct contact. But we are continuing our communication efforts with the loan program. The loan program is now open, and I'm working on a webinar aimed at the MORE grant recipients. So they will be the prime users of the MORE loan program. I don't want them to lose their momentum after they get their audit, which is essentially the first step for everybody. So the webinar will discuss what to do with audit results, rising energy costs, and how the MORE loan application process works. So the purpose is to keep them moving through the process from audit to project design to construction, and hopefully not fizzle out in the process. And I can also mention there is one more additional challenge, which I did not list on this slide, which is LCP Tracker. I didn't list it because we haven't issued a loan and haven't had to use it for this program yet. However, speaking from my experience with it in another program, it comes with a learning curve for its users. And it's new and everyone is still learning how to use it. So it's been a bit of a hindrance, and I'm just kind of foreseeing right now that that's going to be a bit of a challenge as we start to issue some of these loans. So I'm trying to get ahead of that right now. But then lastly, I also wanted to mention that my experience with DOE was actually the opposite of a challenge. I found that my contacts for EECBG and RLF, as well as our program manager, were very supportive of our efforts to blend the programs. I was in constant contact with them with updates and questions, and they were always prompt and helpful. They were very accommodating to our constantly changing timeline and urgent need for budget alterations to make this program the success that it's been so far. So the best recommendation that I can make is to keep close communication with DOE when working on these types of programs. Next slide, please. So that is our program in Pennsylvania, and my contact info is here if you'd like to reach out with any questions. I'm happy to answer any, even just part of this call. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Elena. Really appreciate it. I thought that was a great presentation, and really enjoyed listening to how you ended up finding a way to make to make EECBG and RLF, synergistic in terms of their operation. We have one more speaker before we go to our discussion portion and any questions for our speakers. And so we're going to go back to the Midwest here for a second, and we're going to go to Kansas. And Abigail is going to talk to us about Kansas's revolving loan fund program and what their next steps are.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Abigail Emery. I am the grant specialist here at the Kansas Corporation Commission. The Kansas Energy Office is housed within the Corporation Commission. So we have a little bit different challenges than some energy offices might have. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So the three main goals for Kansas for this program was to, one, create a network of program lenders to work with. And then what I think is one of the biggest ones is to assist the Kansas entities in rural underserved areas, because primarily Kansas is rural and underserved, and they are incurring the highest costs for energy and maintenance. The last goal was to increase the energy efficiency and improve the comfort of buildings in Kansas. So those were our primary goals. We did take priority for the people in rural underserved areas. Those are the ones who receive priority with this program. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the RLF, we split up into two different types of programs. We have our loan program and our grant program. So our loan program is set up a little differently, where we participate in 50% of each eligible loan, and then Kansas's share of the loan would be interest-free at 0%. So since we don't have the ability here in the Kansas Corporation Commission to actually issue loans, we have to work with lenders to actually pay out and send out the loans. So how we had it set up was we give them 50%, and that was contingent upon their interest being half of whatever their normal interest rate would be. The eligible lenders that were able to become a program participant were federal and state chartered banks, credit unions, community development financial institutions, all certified by the U.S. Department of Treasury. And we also wanted the banks to have a house in Kansas. So it couldn't be just some online bank. It had to have an actual branch in Kansas. The eligible borrowers for this program would be building owners of small businesses, agricultural producers, nonprofits, municipal and county governments, colleges and universities in Kansas, and then along with state agency buildings. So the small businesses had to have less than 500 people. That was the qualification for that. And then most of these we were pushing to be more than the rural underserved areas in Kansas. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the eligible types of projects where they could be an agricultural building or facility. The building or facility had to be owned and occupied by a nonprofit organization, and the building and facility owned and occupied by a small business, a publicly or privately owned school, building, or facility, and then a publicly or privately owned building, facility occupied by a state or local government, because we are aware that many of the local governments did not own their own buildings. They might have leased them, but we still wanted to give the opportunity to have the upgrades done and retrofits done in their buildings. The project had to include a life cycle cost effective. They must be life cycle cost effective. That was one of the requirements. And it had to address at least one of the following. So it had to be the energy efficiency of the building, the physical comfort, or the quality of the air. So those were the requirements of the specific building project. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So as I said at the beginning, we have two different programs within this. We have the loan program, and then we have the energy audit subsidy, or the grant portion. So we decided to offer sub-grants to offset the cost of the audits that are required, because we didn't want people to be hindered, especially the smaller municipalities or business owners, by having to get an energy audit. The same people who are eligible for the loan are eligible for the energy audit subsidy. So what we have set up is we reimburse 100% of the cost for nonprofit buildings, and then 2/3 for the eligible entities that were left. upon completion, then 1/3 of it after they actually implemented the recommended measure. One thing with this is we did not require people to go through with the loan to get the energy audit subsidy. But we would recommend them to go through with it, but they're not required to do that. And with this energy audit subsidy, each entity is limited to no more than 3 buildings per project. Go ahead and go next slide, please. So some program milestones is we were awarded on July 31st last year, and we hit the 180-day deadline requirement in October. We hit it through the pathway 2. So we had our applications available and the RLF funds are ready to deploy. Kansas has not issued a loan or audit subsidy to date right now, but our programs have been up and running and applications open since October 30th. I go ahead and go next slide. So how did we design the program? Like I said at the beginning, we don't have the capability to administer loans here. So we decided on a loan participation with local lenders. We utilized the available technical assistance for the design and worked closely with Jeff Pitkin. He was great help and had many calls with him. Then we also communicated with the Kansas Bankers Association and Kansas Credit Union Association to help design and review. So we had phone calls with them and had them also, their attorneys, review our loan participation agreement, and also our participation term sheet to see if there were any issues with it or potential problems that we might foresee happening. And they have been greatly helpful at being communicative with us. Next slide, please. So some successes and challenges. Some successes are we did hit the deadline without having to need a extension, which when we first got this loan, I was kind of leery about us hitting that deadline. But thankfully we were able to. It's a big first for Kansas. We've never designed a loan participation program like this that we've done before. We did have the R program back in the day, but that was set up differently than what we have set up this program to be. Some challenges that we are facing is lender participation. That's our biggest problem at the point, I would say, because we have heard from the Kansas Banking Association that the added compliance that goes along with federal programs is deterring some of the lenders away, because currently how it's set up is our agreement is with the lender directly, not the municipality or the nonprofit. So the lender is on the hook for all compliance at this point, and we have been told it's not worth it for them. So we're trying to figure out ways to overcome that hurdle with the compliance aspect. Next slide. So that's our program currently right now. We're hoping to push forward. And I've also included my contact information and a link to our program materials. If you're interested, it has a link to our participation term sheet and our participation agreement. And also our notice of funding that outlines the specifications of our programs if you are interested. And I'm also available for questions after as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Abigail. Really appreciate it. Definitely understand the challenges with some of the requirements for some of for some of the federal requirements like Davis-Bacon. I know that's been a refrain we've been hearing from several states. So it's not just, so it's not just yourselves that are in that bucket. So, keep fighting the good fight there. So we do have a couple questions for you in the audience, but before we get to those, I just want to have a quick discussion with our speakers. If you do have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to, put questions in the chat box, or also raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and we'll be able to call on you as soon as I see the hand raise. But I think let me start with Leah here. I think let's dig in a little bit more in terms of your support for the regional development organizations. You mentioned, state fairs and a couple traveling presentations as one angle. How did your office come up with those, and how have those kind of worked out in terms of drumming up interest?
Well, I mean, what I will say is one of the things that Southwest RDC has identified was a challenge for them when they were building this program was getting the word out. They had found some foundation money that helped support some of the administrative costs related with that of lifting up a new program. They currently use a origination fee and plus the interest to help with the maintaining of the program. But that initial startup was really hard because there was just no knowledge of this program. Now we have a lot more on our side. There's kind of multiple things. The St. Paul Port Authority and SRDC programs are so successful that the word is out there. They get a lot of referrals through contractors, they have other sources of people who have successfully done this that are great models. So that's really good that we have that to start with. Additionally, the new RDO programs will have a mentor in SRDC. They have someone that has been there and done that. And so I think setting up their programs and kind of defining what their outreach, what is best for them, is going to be a lot easier than the first ones that had to forge that path. The Energy Information Center is a multi-year project here at the State Energy Office, and it involves a lot of people that are working towards meeting people where they're at, versus like, here's a website and you have to go dig through a website to find information. We are trying to figure out through those local partners the best ways that we can reach people. And so we actually have communications people that are part just of our state energy office, which we know we're really fortunate about. But then also we have those tools like the Clean Energy Resource Teams, which is partially funded by Commerce and the University of Minnesota and housed at the University of Minnesota. And having that is a critical partner. They're like the bullhorn for us. We can help create the messages, but then they really help to get it out there. And I think that's really critical and is going to be critical in how we approach building specific outreach initiatives to the RDOs that are going to have new programs, but then also to those regions that won't have a small regional program with that central administrator. We need to figure out the best ways to reach those people too. So, I mean, I think one of the points that I want to make is that the conversations never stop. We're just constantly looking for those opportunities to continue to talk to community and meet people where they are.
Got it. So a couple questions here in the chat box I want to just go to. Quick follow-up for you, Leah. Does the St. Paul Port Authority program, does it lend to public school districts?
So they do. So in this Trillion BTU program, they don't specifically, this is for businesses, but they do have a lending program that which is a separate program to nonprofits. And I do believe that schools or school districts are in that. We have a loan loss reserve for that program. But I don't think that they do a lot of lending at this time to the school districts. I mean, and Emma, what I could do is if you have questions specifically about that, I could take it back to the St. Paul Port Authority and ask them about that smaller nonprofit lending program that they have.
Got it. So I think turning things over to Elena, tell me a little bit more. You mentioned in your presentation that the key messaging here for reaching out to municipalities is you use other associations, the Economic Development Office, but you mentioned that direct conversations with the right people were key. You know, who in this instance would be, or were the kind of the right folks to reach out to within the municipalities that really kind of helped, you know, spur lending or spurred like thinking about how to, you know, use the RLF and ECBG funds to get loans for the projects?
So our discussions that were most successful were coming through sustainability offices or just anywhere really where they have like influence in the decision making of like the buildings and structures themselves, which seems like an easy feat, but when you're just trying to Google or you maybe even go through your typical contacts through other DEP entities, you're not always quite speaking to the correct people or being even referred to the right people. So one of just as an example, one of the like key people that we used was Keystone Energy Efficiency Alliance, because they have contacts across the state with people who work in this capacity at the local government level. So they were making the introductions and helping us with like offering office hours to have those one-on-one conversations that really helped us garner more interest in the program and also help us ensure that we had interest across the Commonwealth and that it wasn't too like concentrated in one area, because that's simply what happens with some of our programs is they end up very concentrated around, say, like the Philadelphia area. So we needed help from some of these other places to make those introductions and get us talking to the right people.
Got it. Really helpful here. And then Abigail, we have a question in the chat box for you. So you know, Kansas's agreements and program term sheet made it clear that the state energy office is responsible for federal compliance. So how have lenders taken the view that you having an agreement with them makes them responsible for federal compliance?
Yeah, so in our program participation agreement, we have to flow down our terms and conditions of our federal grant requirements to them, which includes the compliance of Davis-Bacon. So we do have a paragraph listed in our participation agreement that requires them to ensure that whoever their lender, like whoever they're lending money to, is in compliance. I think that what gets tricky with that is that when you have flow down requirements, you're going to have multi-levels because you'll have the lender, then whoever's the borrower, and then their contractor, and then their subcontractor. And that's something that we have to really look at and figure out how to resolve that challenge in the compliance aspect.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. And then Leah, we have one more follow-up question for you with relating to public schools. Is the complication of the school budgets or funding sources the reason why it's harder to lend to them?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I know that we have, I mean, and I might not be, actually, my boss is on this call. I believe that Kari Moeller is on this call, so she might be able to address this better than I can. We do have a Solar on Schools program, and I don't know if that's a straight grant program or a loan program, but Kari, are you here still? Possibly? Yes, there she is. You got to unmute.
Yeah, I can
There you
jump
go.
in here on this. So the lending program specifically that the trillion BTU and the commercial PACE programs are specifically for commercial properties. And so no, these aren't designed for public schools. We do run other programs under our Energy Information Center, and we work very closely with the Port Authority, also our regional development offices, as we're rolling out these financial programs for options options for the public sector as well. So we are currently developing a program called LEAP, the Local Energy Efficiency Program, that will cover support, grants, and lending for energy audits for our public buildings, including schools, local municipalities. We are leveraging SEP bill dollars to cover lending for energy audits for tribal entities as well, for entities that don't necessarily fit the funding requirement for public entities, because we pay for those programs when it is either a zero interest or a grant. Those come from our PVE, our Exxon dollars, and we have specific language that those are for our public entities. So we do use other programs and other resources to help support our schools. And as Leah mentioned, one of those is a big program that we're rolling out right now in Minnesota is our Solar for Schools.
Thanks, Kari. I really appreciate that. So we do have a few minutes left before we have to wrap up for the hour. So we had a couple of discussion questions for you in the audience. We wanted to get some feedback on this in terms of where you are with the process. And so what are the challenges that you're still having with your energy efficiency revolving loan fund, just implementation process now that you're kind of getting close to the end? And/or, what technical assistance do you still need from US DOE or NASEO on this subject? And then are there any questions you have about, closeout agreement requirements or anything like that? So obviously feel free to answer any one of these three questions. Happy to call on you if you raise your hand as well. So feel free to speak up whenever you're ready.
I was curious. This is
Sure.
Kari again from Minnesota. I was curious, and I heard both in our presentation from Minnesota and the other presentations, one of the challenging components is, thinking about the administrative costs, and especially when we're passing this on to third parties and the reporting requirements, the LCP tracker, really the added costs of education, technical education and assistance to our partners. And the costs of that with administration. And when we are trying to lift up these RLF dollars, specifically getting them as into the hands of our consumers in terms of financing and loans, that administrative cost, what we're able to do there and how it's really tricky and how to cover that, like whether it's marketing and getting the word out, whether it's again, some of those technical costs for some of our regional development offices building up a lending program, unless they're running a portfolio of other programs where they can combine those administrative costs and keep those interest rates within our limit, it can be really challenging. How are other states kind of working to, I guess, be creative around the limitation on those admin costs?
And this could go for either of our speakers or for if anybody in the audience has been working on this issue as well, feel free to speak up. And Kari, I know this is also something we can certainly bring up with DOE as well, in terms of just something that that you've mentioned as being a challenge.
Yeah, I think maybe for future technical assistance needs is kind of thinking about ways to stretch those admin dollars or find resources for that to engage, make it more affordable for partners to engage.
Got it. Anybody else with questions or thoughts? Abigail, maybe yourself?
I personally would like more technical assistance on this whole LCP tracker. We haven't obviously dealt with it in this grant yet because we haven't had any, but dealing with it with other grants with DOE, there's been lots of confusion and like miscommunication on how it's set up, who puts things in, what who does what in the process. So that would be helpful, especially when we do have like get loans up and everything. The LCP tracker has been the most challenge for I've seen us and our sub grantees and our other loans and grants that we've had because it hasn't been clear communication, at least on my end. I don't know if I'm like not looking in the right spot, but that's what I have experienced.
I'm gonna agree. That's been my experience as well. What I have found with a lot of my communication around LCP Tracker is that you have the folks that understand how Davis-Bacon works, and then you have the people that understand the technical side of LCP Tracker, but I have yet to find a way to marry the two. To explain to me Davis-Bacon as somebody who's still fairly new to like the government space, who can also show me how to do it in the tracker. So I have had conversations with my contacts at DOE asking for better resources that are more targeted toward maybe like what our roles are in LCP Tracker, and resources that we can also provide to contractors or lending partners and anybody else who has to use it.
Got it. So in like a Venn diagram, you'd have all the people that understand Davis-Bacon on one side and everybody with the LCP tracker on the other. And we want to find the middle section where someone understands both. Okay. We can certainly bring that up with DOE as well. That's not a problem. So quick question for the audience. Is there anyone else on this call who is keeping their EERLF funds separate and also doing anything residential? Any other states doing residential on here? Doesn't sound like it for this call. We'll make sure to, Miracle will make sure to reach out and see if we can. It looks like Iowa's starting with residential, but for multifamily. So we'll reach out and see if we can find a couple similar states that are also doing single family residential. And with
Sam,
that, yeah.
Sam, this is Jeff. I can also follow up with Miracle on that because I think I can help her identify the specific state programs that are focusing on residential.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And with that, we have about 2 more minutes to go. So I think I want to just have our speakers just leave us here with what would you say is maybe, the top one takeaway you want everyone to leave here with? If you had to pick one thing that you want to have everyone make sure they go away with having learned.
Lean into community, find those community partners, find those people that you can bounce ideas off of, ask questions of, share information with, and just take the temperature on ideas. You don't have to do a full-blown RFI. You can say, ask them about the needs of their communities, and it really helps generate a lot of really good ideas.
I would say to lean into what's already out there and not try to recreate the wheel. And, Jeff is on here. He's a great resource and he helped us a lot. So just really to utilize NASEO technical assistance because it's been super helpful.
Great.
I'm just going to say communication with DOE, with communities, with organizations. I have just been a shameless promoter of this program since the beginning, because sometimes it feels like there's no other way to get in contact with like whoever your audience is other than having these conversations about it. So it didn't matter the call that I was on in any capacity. I was always promoting this program so that people knew about it.
Great, thanks. I think those are great takeaways. And with that, we have just hit 4 on the dot, so we're going to end our call for today. Big thank you to all of you who came out, and of course, a huge thank you to our 3 speakers for 3 great presentations. We really appreciate you providing some of your successes with us. So with that, we will be reconvening for another one of these calls in June, and we will be highlighting a few more states that have achieved success with their EERLFs. So please feel free to come back. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day and also a great rest of your week, and we'll talk soon. Take care, everybody.